Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to look into Docker Swarm, how to get started, and also a bit of theory. What is it? And here we have a drawing. Let's just go right into it. Docker Swarm is actually a part of the default Swarm Docker, the default Docker engine. So that means that if you have the Docker engine installed on your machine, then you actually then you have the capability to actually start your own Swarm, where you have something called a manager. The manager is usually also a worker. And then you can have workers to join the manager. So this means you have the manager, which is in center. So you need to create or initialize the Docker Swarm manager by just writing Docker Swarm init. I'll show you this in just a minute. And then what happens is that then you have certain workers that will then connect, or they will actually join your Docker Swarm. And then the manager will then distribute the tasks or the Docker containers to these workers, all depending on how many replicas that you want. There is no auto-scaling with Docker Swarm, and that is why it is no competitor to Kubernetes, even though that is very often compared to Kubernetes. Then Kubernetes has many more features. It's much more difficult to learn, but it also has something like the auto-scaler. Docker Swarm is it's a bit simple, but it's also very easy to learn, and it's part of the default Docker package. It uses something called the Engin load balancer. So that means that if we have a browser that accesses a port that is actually exposed, then the Engin load balancer will then direct the communication either to this HTTP application that I have on my manager, on my worker 1 right here, or it would actually distribute the traffic to worker 2. And of course, this is just it's a simple load balancer, but the purpose of the whole Docker Swarm is to have a high availability to distribute some load over multiple machines. And it is very easy to learn Docker Swarm, and that is why it can still be used in some setups, I would say so. But if you want something big and production-like that can never go down, and you want to organize your config maps and your secrets, and you want a horizontal pod autoscaler to be set up, then of course you need to install a Kubernetes cluster and then use Kubernetes instead of Docker Swarm. Your manager needs to be connected to a registry, so all of the workers can then collect all of the images from this registry. If you go to the official Docker Swarm guide, the tutorial, then you will actually set up a custom registry that is just located on the manager machine, and then all of the workers can actually reach this repository, this registry, and then they can collect and pull all of the images from there. So that means that I would actually place my image, which is right here. This is my HTTP application image that I've placed right here on this Docker registry right here. Of course, you can also use Docker Hub. In this demo that I have right here, I will not use the custom registry because it's a little bit more complex. I'm just using Docker Hub to try to keep it simple to begin with. I am going to install the registry because it's just a one-liner. So, but then you can try it out yourself if you think it is worth dealing with. Because the usual flow is actually that you have some kind of application that you want to push to your registry first. And then you want this to be distributed to multiple workers, so to share some workload between the different workers, so you have high availability, so you don't use all of your resources that you have on one machine. Now, let us look at how we can actually do this. As I said before, if you have Docker installed, which I have, then you actually have the capability, the potential to actually start a Docker Swarm. It is quite easy to do so. But before I start writing the commands, let's just look at this readme.markdown file that I have right here. I'm going to create a Docker Swarm manager. Then I'm going to create some nodes, and the nodes are actually created just by participating inside the Docker Swarm that the manager actually creates. Then I'm going to create the registry. We're not going to use it for anything for this demo right here, because if I also build and push the application, then the video will be much longer. Then we have the deploy. Then we are deploying a stack So each set of applications is a stack, and that will be deployed from a Docker Compose file. So if you don't know what Docker Compose is, then of course then you need to read up on that first. You need to know what a Docker Compose file is. Then we want to scale up, and will do this manually. We will scale up the number of instances that we're dealing with, and then we will remove the stack again afterwards. So that's actually it. Let us just look at the Docker Compose file that I have right here. As you can see right now, it's version 3. This is just, it is not this, you should not confuse this with the Docker Compose version. It's not the Docker Compose version. This is the YAML document version, and this is 3 right now. Then we have some services right here. When we are dealing with the Docker Swarm, then we are most often dealing with services. We are not dealing with Docker containers like if we just install one instance on our own machine, as we could when we are developing, for instance. Then we would deal with the instances, but we're dealing with services instead. Of course, you can also target the single containers that are running on the workers or on the manager, but you're supposed to go through the ingress load balancer if you want to have access to the service. That is the whole point of this swarm, to distribute load out on multiple nodes, right? So right here, I have my DB service right here, and of course this name you can write whatever you want right here. You can also write whatever you want right here. This is the Postgres database that I'm starting up. I can choose. This is the new. This is Docker Swarm specific. This means that I will only have one replica running to begin with, and this is just some restart policy. Should it restart always, or what should it do? Environment variables. This is my password example right here, and then my user is Postgres because that's the default user. Then I have my admin user interface, and this is actually the admin user interface that we are going to access. That is the one we want to start up in our browser. And we are mapping out port 8080, and we're mapping that to port 8080 inside the admin Docker container. And when I say that, then it's actually within the service, because now we will actually spin up multiple adminers. Not to begin with, then we will only have one replica. Okay, so now let's get started. So first we're going to initialize the Docker Swarm right here, and I have the command right here, so don't forget anything. Docker Swarm init, quite easy. So this is my own machine right now. So now I have a Docker manager right here. If I want other nodes to join this swarm right here, then I will write this command right here, Docker Swarm, and then join, and then my IP address that I have right there. I will not do that. I will show you an example. I will just have one master worker to begin with, and then I will go to Docker Playground where we can have multiple nodes, and then we will exactly do this. So what can I write now? Then I can write something like Docker services, service ls like this. So then I can see a list of all of my services. I do not have any services right now. How can I see that this is actually Swarm enabled? How can I see that this is a manager? We can write Docker nodes ls. Here I can see my nodes. If this was not Swarm enabled, then I would get an error right here. There would be no nodes inside this one right here. And this manager status right here, that is the leader. And yeah, it just gets an ID. And another way is actually to write the Docker info, and then you can search, you can grab for Swarm. If you do not get Swarm inactive, here we have Swarm active, then it is part of a Swarm. So that's another little trick. Write Docker info and then grab for Swarm. What happens if you don't grab for Swarm? You probably ask right now. Then you can just get a lot of stuff, a lot of information about what is going on or what is being running. So let us clear the screen again. So now I actually have a Swarm just with one worker, which is the same as the manager. And now let us deploy the application. I'll just deploy the application right here. This is actually the registry. If I want to create a registry, then I can create it like this. I'll skip this on my own machine. We can do it on the Docker Playground in just a minute. If I want to deploy a stack, then I will do it like this. So first I'll go to projects, and then I'll go to Docker Swarm. This is my folder right here. And then I'll say Docker stack deploy. Docker Compose file, and then I'll give the file, and I'll say Mike stack demo like this. And now it will actually create some services. It will actually create one service per service we have inside the Docker Compose file. So that means I'll have a DB and I'll have an admin service. So that means I can write Docker service ls like this. Here I can see I have 1 replicas of each. But that's not what we want. That's not why we installed Docker Swarm, right? That's because we have multiple replicas. Of course, it does not make that much sense if you only have 1 node to have more replicas, because that means that if I turn off my machine right now, then it does not matter that there are 3 instances running on my machine, because because my machine was the host for all of these 3. But let us try to write Docker service scale, and then we write this admin right here. Want to scale this up, and also say it equals 3. And now I get 3 replicas instead. Of course, I could also set this in the Docker compose file. Let us just see how it looks right now. So then again, we will list service ls. And now I can see I have 3 instances right here. But can I access this? Does the load balance actually work? Yeah, but let us check if it actually works. So I'll go to localhost 8080, and yes, this is my administration interface for my Postgres SQL database. That's quite cool. Can I log in? I actually don't know. So example and no database. Session expired. Please try again. That is because now I'm actually. This is a bit of fun actually, because that is actually because the load balancer actually transports me to another instance afterwards, and then I don't have any session right now. So that is actually why it's better to have scale equal to 1 sometimes when you're dealing with security also. Of course, this could be solved easily also security-wise if you have control over your application. So now we have 1. Let us just try again. Example. Connection refused. Okay. But this doesn't matter. This was not what I wanted to focus on right now. But it is a little bit fun. DB Postgres example. Is it the wrong username maybe? Postgres password example. And the username or is it admin? I think it is. It is Postgres. Wait. Let us choose Postgres. Okay. Let us choose Postgres. Let us write Postgres like this. Let us write example right here. I chose the wrong system, of course. Of course, we cannot log in then. But so it looks like it works. Let us just set up to 3 again. Okay, so we have actually already created a Docker Swarm right here, and we have done a lot of cool stuff with it. What else do we want to do? We have actually already looked up. We have already. If you want to see only the services for a certain stack, because at some point then you would have multiple stacks running. Docker stack ls. So right now we only have 1 stack running. That means that we have 1 Docker Swarm, Docker compose file that we have named. We have named one stack from that, and at some point you will have it could be you will have 20 stacks on your machine or in your swarm. And when I say your machine, of course I mean on your nodes in the cloud. And then when you have all of those, of course, then it can be a bit difficult to find your services, and that is exactly why we can say service ls, services ls like this. Stacks. Okay, first we need to list the stacks, and then we can list all the services in the stack named Mike stack demo like this. Here we have all of the services. So that's another way, just so it's a little bit easier to get an overview of which services is inside the stack right here. Now let me just click a bit around right here. Can I refresh? Yeah, now the session expired, and that is because then we get another example. Yeah, so now we cannot log in. So now we're into a situation where first we get the first admin interface, and then we try to log in. Then the login request is actually sent to another admin, and then when we are logged in, then we are trying to send the cookie to a third one. So that is why this it does not work for this application right here. Of course, your application need to be to work, and you need to be able to handle that there are multiple versions of them running at the same time. Yeah. And that's actually not easy. I say it's like it's an easy thing. If you have a REST API without a stateless REST API, of course it's easy. You can spin up as many as you want to. Now I want to stop this stack right here. So we say stack im for remove, and then I'll remove my stack right here, my stack demo right there. And now it's removed. And then we'll say docker nodes. Node ls, sorry, like this, and then now I want to stop the Docker Swarm parts. So I will say Docker leave, and then we will get an error message that this is not a node, this is actually the manager, so you can't just leave. Docker nodes leave like this. Docker stack, sorry, Docker stack leave like this. Docker Swarm leave. Yeah, Swarm and Stack, they almost sound the same. Docker Swarm leave. Here, now I get the error message right here. Here it is. You're attempting to leave a swarm, blah, blah, but you're actually the manager. Removing the last manager erases all current state of the swarm. Use force if you want to do that anyway. So we say Docker Swarm leave -- force, and then we have stopped all of it. So that means that if I write Docker info right now, and if I grep for swarm, then we should see that now the swarm is inactive for this Docker engine right here. So that was step one. Now we want to try with multiple machines. Docker Playground. If you haven't tried it before, you just search for Docker Playground, log in, and then you get some machines for a limited time frame. So that means right now I have 2 hours and 48 minutes where I have these 2 nodes installed. And now that we're here, just why not give me an extra node? It's free. So it is made to make it easy to play around with Docker. I want to create a Docker Swarm now. So I say Docker Swarm init like this. And yeah, and now we have this problem right here. That is because there are different interfaces. There are 2 different network interfaces on inside these virtual machines right here. So that means that we need to write docker init -- advertise adra. So that means that if you have a virtual machine or a normal host, of course, where you have multiple network devices or network interfaces, then you have to say which interface you have to mention which interface that you want to run the swarm for. Where do we want the manager? I want it on this network IP right here, because then it can be reached by the other nodes that we have right here. So I'll just write this, enter. And then we get this long command right here. And then this is a little bit annoying. We have to say inspect. I cannot just copy from that part right there, or can I? No, I cannot. So we need to go in and inspect this part right there. We want to inspect this part right here. Inspect. That is. It's up here. And then we need to say, we need to copy it from inside the value right there. Copy. And then there's actually 2 parts. That's the worst thing, actually. There are 2 parts. That's the second part down now. Yeah. So then we go to one of our potential swarm workers. So this could be a worker node. So I'll write Docker swarm. I'll actually best paste this. Control-Shift-V for paste. And could I copy it like that, actually? Control-C, copy. Oh, I could not. Okay. So there I pasted it, but it's not all of it. Let me just go back. And then we need to get the rest, which is up here. I'll just mark this part right here and say inspect. That is. Then I'll get this part right here. Copy. I'll go to my node and I'll paste the last part right there. Control-Shift-V. And let us join the swarm. Okay, so now we have joined one right there. Okay, can I just press enter maybe? Let me just press enter. What happens if I press Control-Shift-V now? I just get the last part. Okay, but that's okay. So then now we go to the third one. So the third node, then we paste the first one part of it. and then we paste the first, then we copy the first part right here, inspect, copy, and then we go to the third right there, Control Shift V, because we can paste, enter. So okay, so now we have three workers in all, and one of the workers is actually also the manager. This one right here, Docker Swarm ls. Oh, Docker nodes ls like this. Node without s. Docker node is like here. Now we can see we have 3 nodes, and one of them is the leader. That is this one right here. So that's quite awesome. That's quite cool. Now, what do we want to do? We want to take this beautiful Docker Compose file right here. And actually, we would like to start with, let us just set the number of Postgres databases to 3. And the number of admins that's okay to 1. We can also put it, let us set it to 7. We want a lot. Or maybe 10. Yes, 10 is a good number, right there. I'll copy this. I'll copy it to the manager right here, and then we will say, then we'll say vi and docker compose.yml. So now we are creating the file, paste, save, and so now we have a file named docker compose, which is in the same directory right there. And then we can copy then we can create the stack right here. Docker stack deploy, and then we mention the file, the Docker Compose file right there, and then we give it a good name like Mike's stack demo, enter. So Docker node ls like this, and now we can write Docker, then we can write Docker Docker stack ls, then we list all of the stacks, so then we have all of the stacks right there, and then we can say Docker service at Docker services, then Mike's stack demo like this. If I could, let's see here, right? Docker services, not document, Docker Swarm. Docker stack, I think it was Docker stack services. Yeah, that was. I'm always, as you can see right now, I'm fiddling a bit with the commands, but yeah, Docker Swarm services, and then the name of the stack, and then we can see we have 3 out of 10 replicas right now. So that has been replicated, and now we're up to 10 because we waited a bit. So now we actually have 10 different. Now we have 10 different replicas for each of these. That is quite awesome. So let us write Docker PS. Then we can just see that those are just the containers. And as you can see right now, if I wanted to, inside this manager, I could actually /worker, then I could actually just start up another non-swarm container if I wanted to. So you can mix Docker Swarm with the non-swarm containers if you want to. It is just to start something. I could write Docker run -it, and then I should say Ubuntu bash like this. So now it's downloading an Ubuntu image, and then it will run a container based on that, and then I should get a bash. Yeah, so now I'm inside another container right there. So that is a cool thing. We can mix swarms with locally running or with non-swarm containers. So what else was it that we have? Docker, it's just right here. Was also something with, so we have I think this is actually it. We have the Docker Swarm right down, that's Docker service, Docker node, Docker image, Docker. That's also, but if you want to look up a task, if you want to see all of the tasks, I have not tried that actually. Docker task. Docker nodes. Node ls. So I would like to see what is actually running on each of these nodes. It is possible. I've forgotten the syntax. Let me just find it. So Docker Swarm, see tasks. Each container is actually called a task. So task states Docker service PS. We have actually done that. Docker service. Yes. And then we need to give the name of the service, of course. Docker service ls first. So here we have it is actually this service right here. So yeah, so this is the service that we're interested in. So we say Docker, and then we say service. Yes, and then the name of the service, that's Mike's stack demo db. Yeah, that was actually the list I was looking for right here. So here we can actually see which container, which container ID is running on which nodes. This is node 3, this is node 3, this is node 1, node 2, node 2, node 1, node 2, node 3, node 1, node 2. And then we find out, okay, and the purpose of this is, of course, to give us higher availability, but it's also to be able to scale up and down as we want to. So this means that, okay, now we can see that now there's no load on our system. So we want instead to scale down a little bit. So what we're going to do, we will say Docker, Docker stack ls first. It is actually the service we want to Docker scale service, and then we want the name of the service right here, and that is the Mike's something, Mike's stack, Mike's stack demo underscore db. Demo underscore db, and then we say equal to maybe 4. Docker Swarm scale Docker stack. I forgot again. Let me just go and look here. What was it? Scale what? Where is the scale command? Scale service, yeah, of course. So we have service scale, yes. I think that's actually the most difficult thing. That is to know when is it when is a stack, when is a node, when is a service. But of course, it is the service that we are scaling up and down, so it makes sense, of course. So, and the same, but if we want to see that service that we just saw before, so let's see it again. So we have service PS somewhere. Here we have it. So here we're listing the service. I guess after using this a lot, then of course it will be easier. I'm used to Kubernetes, I must say so. I must admit that. So I also, yeah, of course, what I prefer with Kubernetes is that it's much more complex. So I can have all of my configurations and my secrets, and I can have horizontal pod autoscale. I do not have to run these scale commands by hand. I can just say that I want maximum 80% of load CPU on a CPU, and then when that threshold is met, then a new pod will just be created automatically by the Kubernetes cluster. I think that's it actually, and feel free to ask questions as usual. And thank you very much for all of your comments. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to sit and reply to all of you. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.